Hello and welcome to the channel. No video last week because, well, I was sick. So let's take the time today and make a brand new one for you. I'm gonna try and condense a 4 and something hour drawing into a rough 20 minutes for you. So let's get into it and talk about it. Now, today we will be drawing a sci-fi, oppressive, epic cityscape. For that, I'm just going to set up my frame as you see here, 2 vanishing points as always, and then it's just going to be about building something. Now I know I want something in the foreground. I think it's aesthetically pleasing, so I'm going to put something on the bottom left corner here. And for the rest, I don't have much of a game plan. I didn't do a sketch for this one. I just I wanted a huge facade in the background, and we're gonna be making it up as we go. So plenty of time lapse coming in this one. Let's start right now with it. Let's go. So we have a bit of a layout in front of us now. You can see on the bottom left this flat panel that I've put. That's going to be my foreground, and for the background here I decided that I wanted some kind of repeating pattern, so I've built those 4 4 elements that will have some variations, but they're the same size and pretty much the same shape. We're just gonna make them different a little later in the process. So for that, see, I'm using the replication method a lot, which is just what I'm doing here, finding your center point in a square or a rectangle, and that allows you to cut it in half, in thirds, fourths, fifths, whatever you want, as well as replicate it on this side. Here I'm cutting it in 3. So you see what I'm doing for that. I'm linking then the corners to the middle of the top line, then drawing a vertical, and that gives us 3 equal parts. Anyway, there'll be again plenty of time lapse, but let's take a second to talk about what I had in mind here. So the only keywords I had were large, epic, oppressive, a bit of a machine city, something dystopian, something not very welcoming, and something a little mysterious. The mysterious part might be me chickening out on making things look too realistic. I think it's nice in sci-fi to have some elements that keep you guessing, like what is this thing? So we're gonna keep on drawing here, and we're gonna time lapse a bit through it and come back when I have a bit more detail in my pencil work here. Here we go. So not much new here, but you see I've added those, these bridges. They're pretty much going to be the only elements that's going to give a sense of scale to this, and it's still pretty rough because it's hard to say if they're as wide as a highway or if they're a bridge just for one person, but it still gives some sense of the size of those buildings. So I've put a couple, didn't want to put too many, didn't want to make it crazy busy. I think I want the background here to be the focus. So we've put a few, and we're going to start inking this so we don't get a million pencil lines that make the drawing confusing. So let's come back when there's a little bit more ink on this. Here I've started to design a few of the elements I'll be putting in those recesses. Not giving it crazy much thought. I want something that's a bit of a different shape. I want to have some different angles left and right. So yeah, I've got these 30-45 degree bends in what will ultimately become some big vents. and that's just to populate these recesses with stuff like machinery and vents and whatnot. I think at this stage I'm not yet thinking about what materials this city is going to be, but it will turn out to be some kind of metal, I think, in the end. I mean, you're very free when you design sci-fi stuff like this. I don't think you should worry too much about materials. The choice is yours. I mean, you can make it concrete, you can make it some kind of plastic or ceramic, you can make it metal, you can decide to have it pristine or have it completely weathered out. I think there's a lot of freedom in choices at this stage, and that you should absolutely not feel too constrained when you design this sort of thing. My inspirations in terms of shapes here were very much from brutalist architecture, which I love so much. Just big blocks, big functional items, function before form. If you're interested, just take a look on the internet at examples of brutalist architecture, and you will find just what I mean. So let's move a little further on this. You can see just at the bottom I've got everything divided in squares, and that's going to help me put in blocks and get the proportions right for what's coming up later. All right, let's get a bit further on this one and see where it goes. Okay, we pretty much have the design of this thing done. You can see I'm doing the outlines left and right here to make things stand out and pop out a bit. But in terms of all the surfaces and the volumes, everything's in place. I went on and added a few elements below the bridges and the gap between the two buildings, just to not have completely flat surfaces, but have something pop out a little left and right. And now it's all line work time. We're going to be thinking about texture later. I think it's nice to start by having the color work making a clean new building sort of look, because you can always then decide, well, I'd rather have it weathered or rusty or dirty, whatever. Also allows you to have two versions of the same drawing if you take a picture at the right time. That's always an interesting thing to have, I think. Using pencil here to draw the vents and make sure they're roughly aligned where they belong. And I think the image is starting to come together. If you're more serious than me in your sketchbook, you might want to be considering things like world building, meaning that you take into account who lives here, who built it, why was it built, what's the function of the building. I tend to do these things after the fact. When I work for a client, I'll start with a brief and of course work from there. But when I draw for myself, I usually go the other way around and tend to let the drawing develop in front of me and then decide to take it one direction or the other. These things are really not rigid, and the whole point of sketchbooking for me is to be able to work freely without constraints, and being allowed and able to change the complete meaning or feel of a drawing in the middle of it. So there we go. Let's keep on fitting this. Yeah, let's see where it goes. In sci-fi, cut lines are your best friends. I always say that and I absolutely mean it. Like what I'm doing right here. Just makes this panel that much more interesting and gives it a bit more volume, a little more life, a little more makes it a little more real, making it built of several parts. Same here, just adding lines left and right. You have to decide about what size you want to give your panels, how epic you want your drawing to be. I had a comment yesterday on something I posted on Reddit where somebody said, well, that's not possible. Buildings can't be that big and have panels this big, it wouldn't work. To which I would respond that it's sci-fi. You are completely allowed to do that. The materials might be, different from what we know. There might just be a whole structure behind what you see that actually works fine in real life. I don't think you should, constrain yourself too much with real life problems when you build these. Don't make them ridiculous. Like, don't make a 300-meter tall building stand on a pole that's as thick as a flagpole. But short of that, go nuts. It's okay if the image looks confusing, if it's okay if it looks a little scary because you think, oh my god, how is this thing standing up? How is it working? How is it possible? That'll generate a little feeling of awe in the viewer, and I think it's a very, very good thing to do when you're drawing sci-fi. Have it look real enough so it's believable, but have elements of, damn, how does that work? How do they make this work? How did they come to building things this way or that way? I think it's perfectly healthy, and you'll get away with a lot. So, while we're here, let's time-lapse a little. So what I've been doing in this little time-lapse bit here is basically make holes into things. I liked the idea of a completely flat background, but looking at the symmetry here with that bridge that comes in the middle of those two squares in the middle part of the building here, I thought it could be fun just to break it down a little below. So all I did was add a few lines that create those two tunnels you see underneath it. That and more vents on top, more openings, a few more in the foreground, all that just for the sake of making the image a little more busy, a little more interesting. I think those two openings in the middle of the picture here will make you guess, like, well, where does that go? What does that do? Is it a pathway? Is it structural to the building? What is it? But it does give the sense that you can go inside of here, and I like that. So that's why it's there. Again, here we're putting those huge openings on top here. Are they? They're probably vents, but to what purpose? I don't know. They look cool, they look gigantic, they look like they have purpose. And I think that's enough. So, let's keep rushing through. Okay, now we're pretty much putting texture left and right. Grids, a few more indents, some more cut lines. Simple stuff. There's no rule behind them. You gotta experiment with those things. See what's too much. See what's too little. Play around with them. Just have no fear. There's no way to ruin a sketchbook drawing. Well, almost, because I did that last week. I'll show you in another video. But there's almost no way of ruining it. So you can just feel free, experiment. You can, if you make a mistake, repeat it, and then it becomes a pattern. And then it's not shocking anymore in the drawing. Don't be afraid to add weird stuff, weird shapes, weird confusing machines. Or at least bits of machinery, bits of exposed machinery. Just suggest things, and even if you don't know what they are, it's absolutely fine, I think. Remember, sci-fi is freedom. When you're drawing it for yourself, there's not a lot of rules that you have to follow. This drawing took me a few days, I think 4 days. I think I could only manage to work 1 hour at a time on it, which is unusual, and kept me guessing about a few things like the color I'm going to be using. I decided to go with reds, which my camera then decided were positively orange when I put them on Instagram and Reddit, but it was clearly red. I considered going with some warm grays to make something look like concrete, but a mix of not wanting to have to do all the concrete lines to make the texture, and the will to make something a little different made me go with red, which I think was a bold option. And that's also a reasonably powerful tool color when you want to do a scene like this, which is meant to make you feel a little uneasy. This is pretty aggressive architecture, full of mysterious stuff, and I think putting the kind of color that you wouldn't expect in real life adds to that feeling of almost unease when you see the full picture in the end. I'll keep some cool grays like here for some vents and other items, just to break up a little the monochromatic feel that the picture will have in the end. And I'll keep it pretty simple. I'm going to use 2 shades of red that you see on the right side of the picture here, and I'll use one of my cool grays, cool bluish grays, to add some shade and shadows. So let's go brutally fast through this and be back in a sec. Right, so I meant red, and I did red. So I started by filling the whole image with it, and now I'm coming with a darker tone to help the volume of the drawing come out. The light will be coming from the top left, because that's the easiest setup for this drawing. And now all I have to do is what I'm doing here, which is fill those surfaces with a darker tone, and that's gonna make the perspective really come out and shine. Long, tedious, boring time-lapse time. Here we go. So you see, that makes the volumes pop out quite a bit, and I like the contrast with the metallic gray I've kept here. Here comes one of my enemies. I decided to have the guts to put a cast shadow of this bridge, and I'm completely eyeballing, improvising, messing it up. And once the line's there, now the line's there. Now I got to work with this, and there's no way out of it. So I'll do it just good enough so it doesn't look completely ridiculous. But as I say every time, there are much better ways to do this. It's just not something I take the time to do on these sketchbook pages. So wish me luck on that one. Let's see how it goes. I'll be using the same bluish gray to add some shadows left and right that are not as dark. Okay, let's go through this. This type of shadow really makes the drawing come together, I think. It's good to have a lot of contrast. And these bluish grays are really nice, I think, for architecture and shadows. I use them a lot. I used them again in my last drawing, where instead of a red building, I went with something lighter and warmer. Sand, I think, E33 on Copic. But these really make all the creases, crannies come out, and really help give dimension to the building. So not much to it. Let's go quickly through that and see how it looks when it's done. There we go, just time to add a little bit of texture to all this, and that's super simple. It's just squiggly lines, small circles, little dots, left and right. Again, something to experiment with, find the level of detail you're comfortable with. It's easy to go overboard, so best to start gingerly and build as you go. But this will help make a difference as well. This won't look like an abandoned city or anything, but it will definitely look like it's been there for a while. And also give you the feeling that aesthetic maintenance is not a big focus of the people who built and use this. I mean, if the general look of it wasn't enough to convince you of that, this will definitely nail that nail. So let's fill this up with little squiggly lines and have a look at it in a second. There we go. Now that I've placed the dirt and rust and so on spots, I'm just using a couple of browns and oranges to go over some panel lines to make them look like they're filled with material like dirt basically, or rust. I use a very light brown and a slightly darker one, and then a touch of orange usually to suggest rust. So there you go. I'm just basically going over all those little circled and squiggly lines I did earlier, as well as over some of the panel lines. And I'll do that a few times, first with this brown, then probably with a darker one, and then with a touch of orange. I think here you can really see how the weathering adds to the drawing in terms of making it busy and just more interesting to look at. I've added a few scratch lines with my Pilot pen, still adding a little bit of color here and there, making this foreground here, making the shadows, making the rusty spots, the dirty bits. Again, you shouldn't think too much when you do these, just randomly place them and you'll very soon figure out patterns that work for you or not. It's not something to be afraid of at all. There we go. You're using the markers and feathering so that it looks a little like some liquid ran there over time, or maybe just some erosion happened because of wind or particles or liquids. There we go, a couple of shades of brown here and there. Make it look rusty. It's you can both do those circle and squiggly lines on the surfaces, and also quickly go over cut lines that you've drawn on your drawing with a very light brown or sometimes a yellow, and that helps make the place where the panels meet look like more of a physical place where material would gather over time. We're near the end now. Let's see, probably 3.5 hours in, maybe a little more. So there's not crazy much left to do, but let's see what this looks 10 minutes from now. Here we go, a little later. Taking my new friend, the white pencil. I like this a lot for our highlights right now. I'm still learning to use it properly, but I'm starting to feel more and more comfortable with it. That's just to help show where the sun or whatever light source hits the edges here. Again, that brings up the contrast that little much more, and always helps make things look a little more vivid and interesting. Yeah, but I think this is the very last step in this drawing, so I think we've touched up on some drawing aspects. remember how the construction phase, how important it is. No matter if you're just getting a chair somewhere in your sketchbook, or if you want to make a full scene or vehicle, whatever, construction is really where it starts. And the more you master that, the more you master perspective and construction lines, the easier it will be to build really complicated scenes and shapes and structures. Never ever underestimate that. And I think that if there's also one thing you should take away from this drawing in particular, and well, quite a few that you've seen me do here, is that you should feel free when you are working on this sort of drawing. There are a few technical rules if you want to make it correct. That's why I emphasize construction and perspective. But in terms of style, in terms of realism, don't pressure yourself. Just let the drawing appear in front of you. Start drawing, start making shapes, start digging into them, and see where it takes you. Don't be too rigid, don't be afraid. I think that most of the time, just, you know, if you push through the ugly phase or the boring phase of a building, of a drawing, sorry, you will find yourself with a drawing that's worth looking at in the end. So try and feel free, try and have fun, try and experiment. The use of that red color here was a big leap for me, and I think it works really well. I think it adds what it should, where it should. It looks a little strange, it looks a little aggressive. Reminds me of the robots that scared me when I was a kid in movies like The Black Hole from Disney. I think that was 79. Oh my god. And yeah, you know, sketchbooking is good. Sketchbooking should be fun. So don't be scared. Don't pressure yourself. But always try and finish your drawing. Always try and push through, no matter where you messed up. I think that'll be a good subject for the next video, where one of my drawings started very well, and then when it came to doing light and shadow, I went beyond fixing. So I made a series of stupid choices and stupid mistakes. Tried really hard to fix them, until there was just nothing left to do. And no big deal. The next day I took the same idea and didn't make a carbon copy, but took very much the same idea, made a brand new drawing, remembered not to do the mistakes I did the previous day, and it turned out just fine. So yeah, you know, worst case, if you mess up, it's just a drawing and you can make another. Anyway, this is going to be long enough as it is. Hope you've enjoyed it. Again, please comment if there's any topic you'd like me to touch up on next videos, or if there's anything you don't like in this one. Just keep me posted, let me know what you think, and we'll try and keep making those videos for you guys. In the meantime, take care. Thank you for dropping by. Like and subscribe if you've enjoyed any bit of this, and I'll try to make more videos for you. Have a good one. Bye bye.